All right, Coach, go ahead. Season starting next Thursday at Akron.
Yeah, it's time. I think about every college football team, college football coach, players, everything else at this time of year, that it's time to go play a game. And so I think that we're at that point too. And I'm excited to see this group go out and play and compete. I think within the group itself that we can expect, a rapid growth and development as we get through the season as well, from where we're at. But we're excited to go play this week. I think, every week the Mountain West will give you like a talking point here and there. They won't necessarily approve of this one necessarily, but we're 9-8. Our conference is against the Mid-American Conference in the last 4 years since 2021. And 8 of those games of the 17 have been one-score games. Us and San Diego State are the only 2 schools with a winning record against the Mid-American Conference in that time. And we've played 5 times, and 3 of ours have been one-score games. So, we expect that we're going to have to go on the road and play very well. That's the expectation that we have internally anyway, that we need to go and play very well and go and perform well. And so, that's what we want to do, regardless of, where we're at, who we're playing, anything else. We want to play well, and that's where we're at. And so it's a big deal for us to get started.
Jay, how fun was it to we haven't seen the depth chart, obviously, but how fun was it to put this together and go through this camp and see all these new faces? And also, on the flip side, it's got to be really exciting to know that this depth chart can change in a hurry, and you have the horses to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's, we're going to put one out on Sunday. We just finished kind of a stretch of practices this week. We do meetings and walkthrough tomorrow. And, we'll finalize it tomorrow and everything from that standpoint. But it'll be pretty fluid, I think, through the course of the early part of the season. That part I am very excited about. And I think that, I think a biggest part of this is when we look back at last year and where we fell short in certain situations was an overall depth and overall quality depth throughout the program. And so when we went into the offseason and looked at the number of players that we could acquire and the type of players that we wanted to acquire, that we were able to do that in a lot of situations. And so, I do feel good about this group, and I do feel good about the competitive balance of this group. I do feel good about the depth of this group. And now we got to go play, and we got to go do that. And, again, it's, we got to go play well Thursday night, and that's the biggest thing that we're concentrated on. But, I do think there's some positives based on what we've come out of.
Thank you. Jay, are you excited to go play pretty close to home?
Yeah, look, there's a bonus to it, I guess, in that regard. I'm just excied to go play a game with this group and to do that, and it just happens to be, not far from where I grew up and all that. And so, yeah, that's a cool thing too. But at the end of the day, when we get to 7:00 Eastern time next Thursday night, we better play well, we better coach well, regardless of where we're at and how close it is or how far it is from my home and all that stuff. So I can see some people after the game, and that'll be good.
Coach, week ones are pretty special. The hope and promise of a new season. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, look, it's a big reset in the fact that we looked at different things that we needed to improve at in this past offseason. Look, here's a stat for you, and so games decided by 10 points or less. Last year we were 2-5. In 2023 we were 6-1. Okay. In those games in 2023, we averaged 26.1 points a game. Okay. We gave up 23 points a game. Your margin was 3.1. Last year, in the games we were 2-5, we averaged 21.8 and gave up 24.4. So your margin was negative 2.6. So when you compare year to year, we were 4 points less on offense and we gave up a point more on defense in those games. And that's how tight these margins are. That's why I said, okay, we, We have to expect that we have to play for 60 minutes every week because, you're going to find yourself in a number of those types of games. And our margins are, they're slim. And that's what it came down to last year was, we're basically 13 points away from having 4 more wins a year ago, right? And so, okay, we reset. Now we got to go forward and we got to get this execution back to where we were a couple years ago and beyond. Look, I want us to be better, than what we were 2 years ago. And that was the goal of everybody in the organization. And so that's what we're striving for. And that's, kind of what every day brings right now. And I just like the group. This has been a very low maintenance group. And I think that's a big positive when you're not worried on a day-to-day, how hard people are going. Well, like last night, we had an outstanding practice and then turn around this morning and practiced again. And I mean, it was crisp and moving and everything else. And so there's not a lot of, that I have to worry about, like, okay, are we going to play hard? Are we going to be flat? Are we going to be, now the things that in some degree, what we got to learn with this group to some is what do we do with adversity? How do we handle something negative happening as a team and everything else? And those are the things that you'll find out when you get into a game. And, I do think that with this group and where they're at and, how they've handled everything in the offseason, I want us to play great next Thursday. But I will say, I think we'll be substantially better when we come to a second game than we will be a first game with this group. And I'm really excited about that part of it too.
Jay, I want to preface this question by saying I know Akron is not Arizona State, but last year you guys walked in and faced a team that had 30-some incoming transfers. They were picked dead last in their league, and then walked into a buzzsaw and a team that ended up in the college football playoff. Once again, I know Akron's not that, but how much are you going to be reminding your team of? Caden Anderson just told me we were confident. We thought we were going to go in there and hammer them last year, and how much are you going to remind them that you don't really know, I guess, what this team is going to look like?
No, first of all, we have a great deal of respect for Akron in that regard. They got a very good head coach in Joe Moorhead. They got a very good defensive coordinator in Tim Tibesar. They've got a quarterback in Ben Finley, who's a very good player. They're getting a receiver back, Alex Adams, that was an all-conference player a couple years ago. So I mean, there's a huge challenge in it. Here's the challenge in today's game with regardless of who the opponent is week to week, when there's a lot of roster turnover in a season, right? We don't know how they're going to utilize all the new pieces and parts that they have. I expect them to have very good skill players offensively. Some of which we know about, some of which are kind of new to them. I expect them to be, very difficult from a schematic standpoint offensively and that type of thing. I think what happened, there was things that happened in that game a year ago. Like I had a player tell me, after the ASU game a year ago, it's like, I didn't think they'd be that good. And I mean, I was like, my mind was blown on some of that. And I think that there was, to some degree, there was a misconception of like how good we necessarily were. They needed to be reminded that we were 6-1 in 10-point games, and some of these were luck. I mean, let's just be honest. We block a field goal and run it back against Appalachian State. Okay, what's the numerical chances of that happening? Is like 1 in 10. You're probably more likely to, get struck by lightning on your way home than to have that happen very often. So, I think that there was an overestimation of what we were, certainly an underestimation of what they were, and that's the danger with new games, is that first games in this day and age, used to be, okay, you could look at if a team was bringing back their coaches, you could look at their roster coming back and get an idea of what these players could do, and it's no different than us. We have a number of new players too in this program, and so that's just part of a new reality. Is not only what these players look like, but how they're going to be utilized. Like I said, we have a great deal of respect for our first opponent. A great deal of respect for the conference that they play in, and we got to go on the road, which is always a challenge too. So,
Coach, kind of a mission accomplished in a certain sense with having J. Mike healthy, having a lot of your key guys healthy going into week 1. What does that mean to you, just excitement wise?
Yeah, we're right now we're really healthy. Jake Wilson will miss the first game. Outside of that, and Quinn Grovestein is out right now, but his return should be pretty short order. He's moving around much better. Everything else, I go out to practice today, and there's John Mike Gillenborg, Jalen Sargent, Chris Durr, Caden Anderson, all the O-linemen, all the defensive players. I think that we've look. We didn't have the success we wanted a year ago. I've looked at every phase of the program and how we could do something better, and one of which was our camp schedule and how we operated certain things and did that. Was that the reason that we're healthy? I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of that just year to year. I mean, we did the same thing a year ago that we did in 23, essentially camp-wise, and we were healthy in 23, and last year we weren't. I think some of that's just luck of the draw a little bit in certain situations.
Coach, would you mind talking about a couple of the most heated battles on your depth chart, or ones that you enjoyed watching that were a lot of fun?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a really good competition at corner right now, as far as how that pecking order goes. I think that's one that and I will say this: it's been they've had really solid practices. Like it's not a pecking order of like the good thing in all this, when you sit there and say, well, we've not released a depth chart yet, isn't because we're looking around at it and going, oh my God, who are we going to put out there? This is more about the fact that like I think that there's good quality at certain positions that we've got to have a real discussion about, and how we're going to break that up and look, there's going to be multiple corners play for us. And I think that they've put themselves in that position for that. I think running back continues to be a constantly evolving position for us in our program. I think receiver is very unsettled in our program, just in terms of, there's Sargent and Durr and that whole thing, but Jalen Bean, Mike Fitzgerald, Eric Richardson didn't have a spring. Well, now that the rust has gotten blown off of him, you kind of see, why this guy could be pretty good. Dion DeBlanc, you go down the list, and I'm probably leaving somebody out. There's a good group there. Holman's back, and Holman's been practicing very, very well. So, I don't have a crystal ball on how that'll all play out. And look, I used an example from when I was at Minnesota my last year in 2016. We had 2 players that are in multiple years in the NFL right now that didn't start the season for us on anything other than special teams. And Antoine Winfield Jr. was a true freshman that started playing in week 4. And I think it's pretty well documented. He turned out all right. And Blake Cashman was a guy that was a Big Ten Player of the Week, an MVP of a bowl game and everything else. He didn't start really playing defensively till week 6. And so, there's a lot of guys in our program that was a message to. And that could be the Tyson Deans. That could be someone at another position. That could be whatever, that all of a sudden 3 and 4 weeks into this, as guys continue to improve, there's always going to be an opportunity for something to change.
Jay, we talked about the player-led leadership all offseason. What's your confidence level in being able to see that on the field for the first time against another team?
Yeah, I think that's where, I have a confidence in that offensively, in terms of, what Jack Walsh will do, what Caden Barnett will do, what Caden Anderson will do, what John Mike Gillenborg will do, what Evan Sabota will do, what Jalen Sargent. Like, there's a lot of leadership and a lot of maturity right there. And I think the biggest thing defensively is, we're going to have guys step up across that board at different times. When we're on that sideline and we just didn't have a good series or whatever that way, there's maturity, and there is that. but there, that's got to continue to evolve and do some of those things. Evan Eller has been great that way. And so I think that that's a positive there. I think that Jones Thomas has been very good that way. Ben Florentine has been very good that way. So I think it's there. It's just going to have to continue to grow and manifest itself. But no, I mean, we're in a much better position than we were 12 months ago at this time.
Coach, as the time kind of takes from going to fall camp into regular season, what is kind of that final message you guys are pushing to really, get people really locked in before this first matchup?
I mean, to get people locked in, I think it's just more the fact that, we have a game to play, and we want to play well. And we want to play well regardless of where it's at, who it's against, anything that way. And we know that we're going to have to play well to win next Thursday. But I'm excited just to kind of see this group go out and play in a game, and do that. And I think that they're getting excited for that. I think the biggest thing that we just have to make sure of is the fact that we don't play till next Thursday. We've got to continue to be foundationally sound with what we're doing offensively and defensively up until that time, and not spend our energy out being excited Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and do that. And that's the biggest thing that we've got to do. And there's some guys. Let's take a look. Like even Ethan Stolzatz he played at Kansas. He played a game there and did that. But this will be one of his bigger games that he's played in. Braden Johnson. I think the spring game crowd was the biggest one that he ever played in front of. So so there's guys that look. This is a big deal for them. First Division I game for some of those guys at this level. And, I think that I'm excited to see them play. And they, like I said, they've hit every marker that we've wanted all offseason in terms of how they've done in summer workouts, and how they've done in fall camp, and how we've done in scrimmages, and how we've done when we've put the ball down and said it's live and everything that way. I've been really pleased. So my expectation is that we come out ready to play on Thursday.
Jay, Ben Finley's running numbers don't jump off the page by any stretch, but he actually seems to be a pretty elusive quarterback. Also seems to throw the ball on the run very well. What are your early impressions of him?
Well, his running numbers don't jump off, partly because he's just chosen not to do that some. He can run. That's the thing that will surprise you is you see him not run, and then there's a play that he'll either pull the ball on a zone read and somebody – made a mistake and chased a back or whatever, or he's tucked it on a scramble and done that. He's got far enough ability to move and maneuver to extend plays, number one, which he likes to do, and throw the ball downfield. Secondly is on third downs to keep chains moving. Okay, and that was one thing that was a weakness for us a year ago at times, was quarterbacks got out and created issues for us keeping drives alive, and that was certainly a weakness for us early in the season a year ago. And so we've got to do a great job with that, of keeping him from being able to do that. He's certainly capable. This is not like a guy that just stands there and doesn't move around. He's a really good athlete. My understanding is he's gained about 15 pounds this offseason too. So I'm sure there's a little bit more physicality for him. But he's a good quarterback. This is, that's what he is. He's a good quarterback, and we expect him to have, good skill players, certainly with Alex Adams coming back, and Coach Moorhead is a very good offensive coach and is going to present a lot of challenges.
Jay, you've mentioned early last fall when you told Caden, how much do you want this? What's it been like to see him respond to that challenge and take the reins of this team? Yeah,
he's not the same guy that he was 18 months ago in that regard. Look, he's just continued to evolve. He's a far better player now than he was this time last year. He's a far better player than he was when he started against New Mexico last year. He's had an off season to, continue to grow and develop and learn. He's had a very good spring. He's had a very good fall. He's got a confidence. He's got a grasp. And look, like I said, he's the same person, but he's a far better player on August 22nd of 2025 than he was on August 22nd of 2024. And he's going to continue to get better. I mean, this will be his 4th college start, you know what I mean? So I think that we can expect a really good progression from him. I'm really happy with that whole room right now, and that's been a good thing.
Coach, it seems like at running back you're going to kind of be by committee in the first couple of weeks. With Sam Harris, do you have to kind of ease him in just carry-wise into his role?
To be determined. No, I mean, he's pretty good. So we'll just leave it at that. He's a good player.
Jay, I know this doesn't start officially, or you don't have to start doing it until conference play, but I'm curious if you have an opinion or thoughts on having to do the injury report, and if you think that's a good, bad thing, or just another thing to do.
It's just another thing to do, I think. Look, I get it. I could say whatever I want, and it's really built around gambling. That's what it is, right? You can say whatever it is. Gambling and these prop bets of all this different stuff bring eyes to TV sets. That's what it is. So, I mean, I wasn't ever against it when it was brought up. It's what they do in the SEC. It's what they do in the college football playoff. So we essentially copied the model that the SEC does as far as the 48-hour reporting and the day of the game reporting, and they've told us the things that they will look for. You can't BS it either. I'm not going to put our entire team as questionable and then they all play or something that way. Or you certainly, there's a fine involved if you put a guy as out and he plays, or if you develop a pattern, And so, like I said, they've told us all those things, and I'm all for it. It's good. If this helps people with viewership and all that, have at it. So.